The National Football League. It's the most popular sports league in the US and brings people together over food, family, fun, love of country, and
Now we're going to go to a troubling new study about the risk of brain injury in football.
Ezekiel Elliott suspended without pay over allegations of domestic violence.
Colin Kaepernick is taking his collusion case against the NFL to trial.
And one of the many NFL issues that doesn't get as much coverage is the sexual harassment and overall exploitation of the game's cheerleaders.
Washington Redskins cheerleaders on this 2013 trip tell NBC News they felt sexually exploited.
Hey guys, it's Omar, and this Sunday we're talking about how the NFL's been mistreating its cheerleaders for decades and how some cheerleaders are starting to fight back. But before we get into it, if you like topics like this, hit that subscribe button.
Well, dance and cheerleading are not only a sport, it's an art, and I think that's why I fell in love with it. It's expressing yourself through movement, and it's performing and making other people happy, and that's why I love it so much.
That's Bailey Davis, former cheerleader with the New Orleans Saints. After 3 years of being on the team, she was fired by the Saints for posting a photo of herself in a one-piece outfit on her Instagram page. The team said that her post violated their rules that cheerleaders not appear nude, semi-nude, or in lingerie.
It just didn't make sense to me that they could promote me however they wanted to, but when I did it, it was seen as inappropriate and made me a bad representation of the team. I didn't really understand that they could post pictures of me in my uniform, which is a two-piece and low cut, but the bodysuit was inappropriate.
They also alleged without proof that Davis attended a party where a player from the organization was present, something that would also violate team rules.
And they told me that if a cheerleader's name even came out of a football player's mouth, she would be fired. And that's when I realized, wow, the players don't have this rule at all.
Davis and her lawyer have since filed a federal complaint against the NFL and the Saints on the basis of gender discrimination, arguing that the no contact rule between cheerleaders and players should go both ways if the rule were to remain.
The first thing to do that is absolutely free to the NFL is to change the rules, have them equal, have us not feel like we're the ones having to protect ourselves from the football players. Don't put it completely on us, and our job shouldn't ride on whether a football player is trying to contact us or not.
But even though this might seem like an open and shut case, it's not. The NFL's been able to argue on numerous occasions, which we'll get to, that cheerleaders are not its direct employees and that gender discrimination rules only apply to NFL personnel, a title that Davis and her lawyer argue also applies to her. Okay, before I continue telling you about Davis, let's contextualize cheerleading a bit and figure out how we got to this point. Organized cheerleading as a profession goes back to the 1890s and was a male-dominated activity. And female cheerleaders don't arrive on the scene until the 1940s, as men were being drafted and sent off to serve in World War II. Oh, and some famous male cheerleaders of the past? Dwight D. Eisenhower, Mitt Romney, George W. Bush. W did a whole lot of cheering for war, didn't he? Checks out. The NFL introduced professional cheerleading in the 1950s for the then Baltimore Colts, and the cheerleaders wore noticeably more modest uniforms. It wasn't until the 1970s that NFL cheerleader uniforms changed to what we know today. The Dallas Cowboys introduced new uniforms that caught America's attention, especially after the 1972 Super Bowl, where the cheer squad performed dance routines as opposed to their usual acrobatics. But since then, criticism that NFL cheerleaders are used as props for ogling has been a consistent grievance leveled against the league. Nancy Armour is a sports columnist for USA Today and has reported on this ongoing story.
I think the problem with professional cheerleading is, in a lot of ways, it's not cheerleading. It's basically treating women as objects. If you look at cheerleading in college, it's much more of an athletic endeavor, a sport. It's open to men and women, and that's not the case with professional cheerleaders. And unfortunately, that leads to abuses of the women by the people who are employing them.
Not only did they have to deal with fans ogling them and scrutinizing their appearance, they had to deal with scrutiny from NFL teams themselves. The majority of NFL teams have weight restrictions for their cheerleaders, where they have to stay within a certain weight level and are forbidden from gaining even a few pounds. Of course, this not only has to do with their appearance on the field, but also on the wildly popular cheerleader calendars. One example of this is the terribly named Washington Redskins, who flew their cheerleaders to Costa Rica for a calendar shoot in 2013. During the shoot, some cheerleaders reported they were required to stand around topless, even though there wouldn't be any nudity in the calendar, while others stood around with only body paint to cover them. But it gets even worse. the cheerleaders had to deal with spectators from the Redskins fan base who had been invited to attend the photo shoot.
By having cheerleaders in their current form, in these sexed up objects on the sidelines that have really no other role or no other purpose than to be ogled by fans, the NFL is telling women, we really don't care about you. We want your money, but you as people, you as employees, we don't really care about you.
Davis also experienced a lot of rules and restrictions around her appearance at the games and even at practice.
Our contract was very strict. As far as appearance goes, we always had to have our nails manicured and done either nude or French tip. We always had to have full face game day makeup. That was for appearances, obviously game day and practice. We always had to have our hair done. We always had to have a spray tan, and all of that we had to pay for ourselves.
But Davis also experienced numerous episodes of full-on sexual harassment while trying to sell cheerleader calendars to fans at the game. And in order for Bailey to cheer on the field, she had to sell a minimum number of these calendars in massive crowds that often led to uncomfortable situations.
They would say rude sexual comments. I've had my butt grabbed before, and it is a very shameful feeling, and you feel like it's your fault. And there was one instance where a fan pulled a calendar out of my hand, and he immediately flipped to my month in the swimsuit calendar, and he made just a simple sexual comment about my body, and that was kind of my breaking point.
Davis believes that to prevent sexual harassment, cheerleaders need protection in these situations, just as the players receive protection when they're in public.
Don't have us up on a pedestal as celebrities and in these beautiful uniforms and then throw us out into the crowd with no protection. Having fans be able to speak to us however they want and touch us if they want, that's just completely ridiculous.
And then there's wages. While some players are making millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, cheerleaders aren't even making minimum wage. In 2014, the now Las Vegas-bound Oakland Raiders settled a lawsuit where they were accused of only paying their cheerleaders $5 an hour, when minimum wage in California at the time was $8 an hour. And that same year, the Buffalo Bills disbanded their cheerleading squad after 5 former members filed a lawsuit alleging they had gone unpaid for hours they had worked. And Nancy Armour believes this is further evidence that the multi-billion-dollar NFL doesn't value these women.
If you are contending that these women are valued employees, that they're an important part of the message that you send, they're an important part of your team's community, then their pay should reflect that. It should be more than, minimum wage or whatever it is that they get. Compensate them fairly.
So in the wake of the Me Too movement, with open conversations about sexual misconduct and creating safer environments for women, why have the NFL and its clubs been so slow to enact better pay and create a safer environment for the cheerleaders?
The questions about cheerleaders and kind of the grousing about them has been going on for years, but I think women are finally saying, no, you know what, this is not fair, this is not acceptable, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Despite the slow response, the NFL has agreed to hold meetings with Davis and her lawyer to address unfair pay and discuss creating safer environments for cheerleaders. But many remain skeptical about how far the league is willing to go to bring that change, especially when they're so hesitant about making change in general.
Cheerleader rules are set by each team, so the league can only do so much, but the league can send a very important message that this is appropriate, this is not, and we really think that you should conform to the more appropriate set of rules.
So what can change? Well, some think the reintroduction of men into NFL cheerleading squads could change the pervasive climate of sexual harassment. Both the Los Angeles Rams and New Orleans Saints, Davis's former team, have introduced men as part of their upcoming cheerleading squads. Nancy Armour thinks it's not necessarily a matter of including men on cheerleading squads and more about NFL ownership.
I'm not sure if the NFL will ever get rid of cheerleading altogether. I think it's ingrained in the sport, and I think there are, unfortunately, too many people who think that it's necessary to objectify women as part of the entertainment. I think within the next, hopefully 5 years, cheerleaders will look different, they will be treated differently, and there will be a different attitude about what they do.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know in the comments what other sports stories you'd like us to cover. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.